Welcome students for chapter 2, lesson number 4. In this lesson, we will be looking at chemical reactions. We will be looking at chemical reactions. When we are looking at chemical reactions, or when we talk about chemical reactions, there is something which comes into your mind. When we talk about chemical reactions, something clicks into your mind. What really clicks into your mind is that you will think about stuff bubbling, you will think about boiling stuff, you will think about chemicals in the laboratory and such stuff. But in reality, even just within our own systems, chemical reactions take place. For instance, the oxygen that you take in, the carbon dioxide that you remove from your body, these all are just part of chemical reactions that are taking place in your body. Respiration, for example, is one respiration. So respiration is just but an example of a chemical reaction. So when we are looking at chemical reaction, and as we go through our unit, we will first of all look at the key concepts here. So life depends on chemical reactions. You can imagine life without reactions. For example, if it happens that food cannot be digested, or maybe proteins cannot be manufactured or produced into our bodies, then this is really a bad idea, and we will be in trouble within a very short spell. So the main idea here, bonds break and form during chemical reactions. So what happens is that bonds normally break and form during chemical reactions. We will be looking at this in details as we proceed through the unit. 2. Chemical reaction releases or absorbs energy. So we should also be aware that chemical energy, as it breaks bonds, or during chemical reactions, as it creates new bonds, then what happens is that energy is absorbed in one case, and in the other case energy is released. So the first part of our lesson today is bonds break and form during chemical reactions. Bonds break and form during chemical reactions. So plant cells make cellulose by linking simple plant cells, for instance, plant cells make cellulose. So cellulose is just but a carbohydrate. So they form this carbohydrate by linking simple sugars together. So by linking simple sugars. So the simple sugar here we are talking about is, of course, glucose. So plants and animal cells break down sugar to get usable energy. So plant and animal cells break down sugar. So they break down sugar to get usable energy. Basically, there would be no life without chemical reactions. So, and all cells build protein molecules by bonding amino acids to amino acids. These are just bare examples. Here, proteins are made basically by bonding amino acids together, by bonding amino acids together. When all this happens, what happens is that when all these activities are taking place in our bodies, then these are what we are referring to as chemical reactions. So chemical reaction changes substances into different substances by breaking and forming chemical bonds. Chemical reactions. Chemical reactions change substances. Chemical reactions change substances into different substances by breaking and forming chemical bonds. By breaking and forming chemical bonds. So that is what we are meaning here. It means that chemical reactions basically are responsible for all the changes that we have already discussed here. For example, the plant cell making cellulose or any other products, the plants and animals breaking down sugar to release energy, and even in the production of proteins. So we will be looking at reactants, products, and bound energy. So we want to see how these things really happen. We want to see how these things really happen. And we will be looking at reactants, products, and bound energy. So your cells need the oxygen molecules that you breathe in. Oxygen plays a part in a series of chemical reactions that provide usable energy for your cell. So when you take this oxygen in, you might think it's nothing, but in reality, oxygen is very essential for your survival. So here we are having oxygen molecule. You put it together with other products. So if you have oxygen plus glucose, which is a simple sugar, you end up with glucose is carbon 6, hydrogen 12, oxygen 6. So the process uses oxygen and glucose, and the result is carbon dioxide. Result here will be carbon dioxide. Result is carbon dioxide, CO2, and water. So we are having here this, we can make this into an easy thing by drawing up the, so what we are having here are, of course, the reactants. These are the reactants. And what we have here are the products. This is the direction of the reaction. So it means that oxygen plus glucose will produce carbon dioxide as a byproduct and water. So products are the substances made by a chemical reaction. chemical equations are used to show what happens during reactions. So we use chemical equations to show what happens. This is just but an example of a chemical reaction. So a chemical reaction chemical reactions are used I mean chemical equations, not chemical reactions. Sorry for this. Chemical equations it should be, not chemical reactions. So chemical equations are used, basically to show what happens during a reaction. To show what happens during a reaction. So as you can see from here, we have 6 molecules of oxygen, and we have sugar in this case, which is glucose, and the byproduct is 6 molecules of oxygen and 6 molecules of water. So this basically, and the direction is from left to right. The direction is from left to right. So the reactants are on the left of the equation and the products are on the right. So the arrow shows the direction of the reaction. So this process, which is called cellular respiration, makes carbon dioxide and water that you breathe out. So the carbon dioxide and water that you breathe out is as a result of nothing but cellular respiration. So what causes bonds in oxygen and glucose molecules to break, and what happens when new bonds form in carbon dioxide and water? So these are the questions that should be lingering into your mind. So the main thing that is very important here is that as these processes are taking place, as you can see here, the breakdown of glucose provides chemical energy for all activities, including the feeding, scaring. So all activities depend entirely on respiration for continuation of life. So it means activities like movements, like eating, when you are eating, when I am talking now. So whatever I'm doing here, I am using energy. And this energy is from the source that we are just learning about here, and that is respiration. So we will be looking at respiration in details in another chapter. So first, energy is added to break bonds in molecules of oxygen and glucose. So the first step number 1, energy is added. Energy is added to break bonds. Energy is added to break bonds in molecules of oxygen and glucose. We know that oxygen is a diatomic molecule, which means they exist in pair. So this has to be broken So if we are having oxygen molecule here, then what happens is that it has to be broken down so that oxygen molecules are able to bond with other molecules. So bond energy is the amount of energy that will break a bond. So bond energy is the amount of energy that will break a bond. Of energy that will break a bond. So for this bond to be broken, we must have a bond energy that is between two atoms. Between two atoms. Bonds between different types of atoms have different bond energies. So we can't expect, like, for example, the bond between oxygen, hydrogen, and the bond between, in the HO2, that is in water, where we have the bond, hydrogen bond. We can't expect that this bond will need the same energy to release these two. Here we are having different elements and different atoms. So these different atoms have different properties, and because of these different properties, it is impossible for them to have the same bond energies. So the bond energies differ from one type of atom to another. So bond between different types of atoms have different bond energies. Bonds between different atoms have different bond energies. The bonds might be high, the energy might be high or may be low, depending on the atom itself. So energy is released when bonds form, such as when molecules of water and carbon dioxide are made. So it's not that we need energy to break the bonds, but at the same time, when bonds are formed, energy is released. So energy is released when bonds form. So when bonds form, energy is released. In the first case, so like in the case, for example, like in the case of water molecule and carbon dioxide. So in this case, such as when molecules of water and carbon dioxide are made, so when these are made, energy is released. So when bonds form, the amount of energy released is equal to the amount of energy that breaks the same bond. The amount of energy released is equal to the amount of energy that breaks the same bond. So this is very essential. We mean that in case of any bond breaking, releasing energy, then the amount of energy which will be needed, for example, to fix or to make that bond again will be the same. So for example, energy is released when hydrogen and oxygen atoms bond to form water molecules. The same amount of energy is needed to break apart a water molecule.